Jimmy? Yeah. Hey, everybody. Yes, welcome to the Paid Search Podcast. My name is Jason Rothman. As always, I'm joined by the great Chris Schaefer. Chris, how's it going today?
I am better than everyone else, so I'm doing great. Top of the world, feeling good. I look amazing. I am incredibly successful, and it's great to be on top, Jason. How are you?
I'm doing great. Just to show you how good things are going, my clock on my wall, Chris, stopped. Time stopped.
Jason's falling apart. This is going to be an exciting hour, guys, because by the end of it, the sound of Jason's voice may completely change, and he might just crumble before our eyes. So,
no, Chris, it's going to be an exciting hour because you have a very exciting topic.
Yes.
Last week we had a great episode. We talked about keyword types, and this week we're going to be talking about how to manage a perfect account. It's a very interesting topic.
Yeah. So to follow up, Jason, did you come up with the name for your theory?
I think I might have. It had it was a little kind of a psychology persuasion thing. Let me see what I ended up naming it, because I think you'll get a kick out of this. Easy Google Ads keyword strategy that leads to success. It's called the Easy Google Ads keyword strategy, because I was reading this week. There's something about the word easy that makes human minds just kind of like drop their guard, and they're just like, easy? That's what I need to survive. And then they do what you say. It's called the Easy Google Ads keyword strategy.
Okay. Well, I don't think it's as catchy as the green theory. But it's all right. You know, it's your baby. You can name your baby what you want. It's just I wouldn't name my baby Easy. It's a weird name. But well, guys, as Jason said, we have a really good topic, and it comes from a listener who contacted us and had a really interesting question. But before we get into it, I'm going to let you guys know about optio.com/PSP2. That is the tool to get things done faster in Google Ads. This tool is a paid tool. This isn't a free tool. You have to pay for it. And the reason I say that is because that's a good thing. I get questions, Jason gets questions, our podcast gets questions about what tools do you guys recommend? What kind of tools? And most of the time people are saying, what free tools? Send me to a website where I can, do something for free. And you know how many of those we recommend? 0. We don't recommend them. Literally, you can go back and listen. We don't point to, I don't think, any of these free tools because they're worth exactly that. They're worth nothing. Optio is a tool that you pay for. But here's the best news. 8 weeks for free. You can try this paid tool out for 8 weeks. And the great thing is that's going to get you through a couple of cycles. It's going to get you through 2 months of client reporting. You'll be able to see the benefits of you using this tool that helps you perform your actions in Google Ads faster, get more done faster in Google Ads. So, paid tool, very good price for it, but you can try it for even a better price, the price of free, at optio.com/PSP2. Use the chat box down at the bottom and tell them you heard about them on the Paid Search Podcast, and they'll give you the special 2-week deal, only exclusively available through that link. So, go check them out.
Chris, you want to know something funny? 2 days ago, I was working on my laptop, and I had a glass of water next to me, and I moved my arm to the right, and I just knocked the glass of water straight on my keyboard. On my laptop, all the water, and it just was there. Then I wiped it off, and then the computer wouldn't come back on.
Oh, no.
And so you know what I did? I got up, I went to the store, and I bought another $2,200 laptop like it was nothing. And while I was there, I was perusing the aisle, and I said, you know what? I need a $500 iPad Air too. So I bought that too.
Wow.
And the person at the store was like, is this for a graduation or something like that? And I was like, big event? Or I was like, No, I spilled water earlier today, and now I'm buying a new one.
That's a great story. I like that. It's like,
I didn't even get mad. I was just like, I'm just going to go buy another one.
Oh, yeah. Okay, you spilled water. Here's your $2,700 bill. And you'll be like, okay, I'll be...
Didn't even raise my pulse.
Yeah, I'll be back in if I spill my water again. Thanks.
Yeah. She was like, do you want Apple Care? And I was like, is that a joke? Like, no.
No. I mean,
I don't need that.
Not when I don't need it. That's right.
Yeah.
Man, you know, I'm going to take back what I said. You know, I think I said I was on top of the world, living it up, doing amazing. But I think that story just, that kind of hurt. That puts me in my place. I have not bought a $2,200 item because I spilt water. That's great. All right. Jason, you are my subject today. Jason, you are...
You know, why do you say that, Chris? So you've got skills yourself. Like, I'm going to be asking you a question, too. You're acting like you're prying me open here.
Yeah.
But I want... Well,
no, I want to share...
Let me humor you. I don't even know if I believe what I'm saying. I want to know how you manage accounts, too, Chris.
No, I don't
That's
believe
not genuine?
No. Jason's like, he's like jumping up and down because he's like, me. He's excited. This is the Jason show.
No, I think, honestly, Chris, the way you and I... Well... We have very unique, headstrong styles. With
that's true.
But we really will take some. I mean,
we agree on the same things.
Will you take some of this advice?
Well, let me lay out exactly what Brett from Orlando, Florida, sent us a message, and Brett from Orlando says basically during his very long message. I'm sorry, Brett. I'm not going to play it. But the gist of it is...
Hey, Chris, let me just tell Brett, he did ask the question the right way because there were about 4 unprompted apologies to me within that message.
It's true.
I didn't even do anything to him, but there was a lot of like, I hope you're not mad. I'm asking this. I hope he doesn't get mad at me. I'm sorry for taking up your time. And I was like, yeah, okay. I appreciate that level of respect. So it's a good call.
I imagined him like in the throne room, you know, talking, and you're there, you're the king, right? And he's talking to the queen because he was addressing me, but every time his eyes would like look over at the king, like, is this okay? I'm gonna ask this. Is this okay? I'm sorry. I do this. Is that okay? I'm sorry. It was pretty funny. So basically, he's in a position that many people are very envious of. He's running a campaign that has a lot of history. It has some great success. He's getting conversions. He's getting value. He's getting tons of business out of it. And he said, you know, a couple of years ago, after a certain time, you know, he had lots to do. He had lots of keywords to add. He had a lot of things to kind of grind out and figure out, budgets to change, bids to change, ad groups to change, keywords to adjust, always stuff. Now he's looking at himself is, what do I do now? He's looking at the campaign and he's wondering, what does a highly optimized campaign look like in the management style? Like, what do I do? I come in on Monday. I made money 7 days a week last week. How do I optimize? What do I do once, you know, something's profitable? Once I'm not struggling with quality scores, my click-through rates are really good. All my keywords have a above minimum level threshold of performance, and you know my search terms are clean. So the reason I'm asking Jason is because he has some long-term accounts that have been with him a long time, and he's been optimizing, and I know are extremely successful. And I'm wondering, when you jump into those accounts, I have questions. What do you do? Because it's very difficult to optimize a campaign that's already optimized, that's performing well. What does a manager do at that high level?
First of all, Chris, you also have long-term optimized accounts.
Yeah.
So you have your own way of managing them. But I think the fact that you are genuinely curious, and I'm nominally curious about your work, is that just shows that there is a kind of mystery to it. Like, what do you do? Like, you could see different people having different styles. So
yeah.
I think you're saying you've experienced where you're like, oh, this thing's perfect. Let's get it better. Let's get it better. And then the normal first 3 months, first 6 months, first 2 year stuff has all kind of been checked off. So it's like, what are top Google Ads managers out there doing? So I definitely see the need for the question there.
Yeah. So I have a few questions I'm going to go through. Brett, hopefully this will answer your question. And you guys listening out there, I think this will be something to learn if you don't even have that, you have a new campaign or you're struggling with your campaign. This is the kind of detail, kind of small things that you would pay attention to on your end. If these don't even register as things that you even consider with a non-optimized campaign, you probably have a long way to go. These are things you might want to start at least paying attention to. So I think there's a lot to learn. So first, I want to know I have about 4 categories I want to ask about. And the first thing is account structure. Then I'm going to get into keywords, then bidding, and then just regular optimizing. Okay, so let's get into account structure first. With a general campaign, or a typical account, big, small, doesn't matter how much spend. How many campaigns are you typically running? I mean, is a highly optimized campaign running 15 campaigns? Are you still minimizing the amount of work and running, 1 or 2 campaigns? I mean, how detailed are these campaigns?
Well, Chris, let me just say I wrote down some additional thoughts on it, managing long-term, highly optimized accounts forever for clients. I wrote down some business thoughts for Patreon. So I have some kind of tips or things to share there. We'll talk about after the
behind
show.
The scenes,
but
yeah.
Just want to give you a heads up on that because it is
Patreon.
PaidSearchPodcast.com. Click the link to the Patreon. A lot of people are signing up. We appreciate that. And it's very cheap. It's like $2 a month, and we do at least 4 a month, one every week. But I just want to tell you that, Chris, because we have the inside the account stuff, but we also have the client relationship stuff, which is more of the Patreon stuff. But the client relationship is different years in than it is at the beginning. So there's a lot of thoughts there. But in terms of campaigns, how many campaigns I'm running at once, not to be combative, but nothing changes in the sense of like you do what is good for the account. So I've got accounts I've been running for years where we have at least 50 campaigns, at least. And then I have accounts we've been running for years where we have 1. So it is the common thing we always follow. It's like, just do what's good for the account. I will say this about the amount of campaigns over long periods of time. There's two things that happen. One is when you're running for years with the advertiser, a lot of ideas get talked about. You're in such a good spot profit-wise in terms of the account working that there's a lot of room to try stuff out. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of ideas that either yourself as a manager or the advertiser come up with. And so over the years in some of these accounts, we have completely fluctuated our campaigns. And just to give you one example, for a time we were running overnight. And we thought about, well, if we're going to be running overnight, that takes its own ad copy, takes its own bids. Let's run overnight campaigns. And so we doubled our amount of campaigns just like that overnight, if you will. Pun intended.
So that one is that new campaign is based strictly on ad schedule.
It's based on ideas. It's just based on the ability to have ideas. Because if you're running an account you've been running for 3 months, you're trying to make it profitable. You're trying to figure it out. The budget's $5,000 a month. The advertiser's not going to be going, hey, what if we spent another 30% and ran overnight? They're going to be more focused on what were our search terms this month? Is our conversion tracking working? And you're focused on the day-to-day stuff. But then, like you're saying at the top of the show, once everything's working and just dialed in, then it's like, how do we get more? How do we grow? Well, then we look at the overnight thing. So then we add in double the amount of campaigns. But then you know what happens as time goes on? We realize management-wise, that's not really worth the amount of work it took to.
Yeah.
And this sounds, I don't want this to come off as like, oh, it took work. What I'm trying to say is the way it messed us up, having double the amount of campaigns. And so you're going to add a new keyword, right? You find a good keyword.
Yep.
So now you got to add it to all the daytime campaigns and all the nighttime campaigns. And then you find, oh, this keyword's converting at this rate. So now we got to lower the bids on it. You got to find it in all the daytime ones and all the night. So looking at all that kind of complexity versus what the overnight was bringing in for this industry wasn't worth it. So then you know what we did? We made part of the overnight hours that were working part of our regular campaigns, and then we turn off the overnight campaigns. So my point is the amount of campaigns when you're running these years-long accounts, they can definitely fluctuate as ideas come in, but the fundamental stuff of you can't make things too complex to the point where it hurts your management on the campaigns that are getting you 80-90% of your leads. We've run into those issues and we got to scale back. So I've run into that.
Okay. So you're saying the complexity of having a high volume of campaigns can be difficult because would you say that if there's a campaign that's running and having success during the daytime with one set of keywords, you could have completely different results on the other campaign where one keyword could be successful, but it doesn't work for the other one? So essentially you've gone from managing one account to two completely accounts all within the same account.
And your first account, your first set of campaigns is bringing in 95% of your traffic.
Right.
And so why are you making things more complex?
Why are you, splitting your effort?
Yeah. So
you're splitting your effort.
So we scaled back in this one example. There's other examples where we just run one campaign the whole time. Another kind of how many campaigns you're running. And this is, I'm not going to get into it too much because we'll talk about keywords in a second. But one thing I've noticed in accounts that I've run forever, when I do add in pure broad keywords to want to try them, I'm learning this, and I'm going through this right now with some accounts. Instead of adding them to the current campaigns and current ad groups, that has kind of been messing up my management because then it throws off my metrics and the way I'm managing ad group bids. And so I'm learning as time goes on, when you've got some really quality campaigns and ad groups that have been running for a long time, when you want to test stuff out, take the time to throw it into something separate, whether it's a separate ad group with the naming structure you can control or a separate campaign. When you have these long time accounts, it really is worth it to try the new stuff out in different sections because it's going to mess up your day-to-day flow. And I'm kind of going through that right now, reworking some long-term accounts where I've put in the broad keywords, they're working, but now I've got to kind of move them out because they're messing up the way I manage the account.
Okay. So to put it all in a nutshell, is the reason you would decide on 50 campaigns or one campaign is because based on the ratio of success for one campaign and the value that you get from splitting it based on locations or ad schedule or type of keyword or devices, anything like that. If you find that it's actually worth it, you will split it to the point where you might have 50 or more. But if those areas of segmentation do not derive enough value, then you'll immediately condense it back down and you find that it actually works better.
Compared to the cost of them, which is the complexity.
Right. Okay. That's interesting.
So it's kind of, I guess the overall point is there's nothing different about a long-term account in terms of campaigns, the amount of campaigns, but it's just all this theoretical stuff we talk about in terms of we like the lazy man build because it's not complex. It allows us to start managing clean right off the bat. We like simple campaign structure, simple ad group structure because it allows for the best management. All that theoretical stuff, you actually just see it play out in reality because it is such a long time horizon with the long-term accounts. That's my main point. You see it play out.
That's what so I love making statements here, because this is where we get so many questions. What Jason's saying, and I'm agreeing, is that a campaign that's been worked through and is highly optimized and performing very well does not necessarily have a huge number of campaigns. It does not have.
Yeah, there's no rule that if you're running for a long time, you have to have.
If I log in and see something that have 50 campaigns in it, I should not immediately assume, oh, this is highly optimized, because that is not the case. That's not standard. It does not mean that someone really knows what they're doing due to the complexity of the build. So there you go. Let's talk a bit about inside of the campaigns. Do these campaigns, and I assume it falls under the same idea. I mean, do they all have lots of ad groups? Does one campaign typically have a whole bunch of ad groups, or do you tend to condense them? I mean, on a general rule, what does a highly optimized, management look like for that as far as ad groups?
So same rule of thumb, the stuff we we focus on day to day applies to long-term accounts too. Themed ad groups, make it as simple as possible. But the only difference would be in those long-term accounts where we have tried a lot of stuff out. Some stuff didn't work, but some stuff did. I do find myself having a lot more campaigns with just 1 or 2 or 3 ad groups in them, because stuff comes up where it's like, okay, this is this one area location-wise, or this is this one topic, and we know it works well. It's different than the main stuff, and let's just totally silo it off. And the complexity of doing that has proven itself because we have numbers to back it up. Let's just keep it in its own thing. We can focus on it separately. All the extensions we put in, all the bidding, all the settings, we know it's tailored to this one group of ad groups, sometimes 1, sometimes 3. But I do find myself with a lot more niche campaigns over long-term accounts. Again, it's not every long-term account, but if I am going to have niched campaigns with only a few ad groups, that does happen in my long-term accounts where we've tried stuff out, found stuff that works and wanted to silo it, versus, hey, we're 8 months in and we're still dialing it in and it's working great, but we're not really in the mode of like testing a bunch of new stuff out.
Okay. So what you're saying, what it might look like is you have one main campaign that's, let's say, spending 70% of the budget. It's a campaign that's doing really well, and it might have a number of ad groups. That's not really the point. But the second campaign might have a few ad groups, and it only spends about 30%, and it's very specific. There's a couple ad groups. Those each have very specific roles in what they do. And it's just a side campaign that's running alongside because it is profitable, but the volume.
Well, it's like if you're a moving company and you're in Florida and you do local moves, you do long distance moves, you do commercial moves, but then you're working with the advertiser for years and you get to know their business better and better. And they have a great relationship with the company in New York. And there's a lot of Florida to New York travel that happens. So maybe they come to you and say, hey, this is a big part of our business. It's a growing part of our business. I want to focus on this. I want to max this out. Well, you have a long-term relationship, a long-term account. The day-to-day stuff is real dialed in. And so, yes, what do you do all week? That's where a lot of that time goes is, okay, we've got the local moving account done in Google Ads. It's working great. But now we've got this new line of business, Florida to New York. Let's not make this one ad group. Let's make this a campaign, and let's make this as good as possible. Tailored extensions. A good example of this is like, okay, we make good money on our local moves, but our profits on our Florida, New York moves are huge. So because they're huge, we can afford to run all day long when our conversion rates are lower overnight. So you have a different ad schedule.
Okay. Yeah.
Different ad schedule means different campaign. So because you've got things dialed in 3 years into the regular campaign, and now you're working on this new line of business, Florida to New York, or vice versa, there's going to be different things that come up. Location, settings in terms of the schedule, advanced location settings, language settings, extensions, different audiences. And just since you have that time, because the regular account is dialed in, the regular campaigns, put the Florida, New York one in a separate campaign and build it out from there. Those are kind of the specialized small amount of ad group campaigns that we have running sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, I can actually see.
Do you see the value of that, Chris? Like,
yeah.
You have the main thing dialed in, so now you have the time to build out the new thing. And instead of doing the new thing and the main thing like usual, keep it separate from the start, because we all know that's technically better. It's just early on, before you know what's going to get volume or before you know what's important to a client. You don't necessarily want to build out every ad group into its own campaign because it's not worth the complexity. But once you know Florida to New York is like really high profit for them, then you know it's worth building into its own campaign.
Okay. So I could actually see it as an illustration of a heat map. As if you have your one campaign and there might be certain hotspots and you say, this is interesting. And instead of restructuring your entire system, you just pull that one hotspot out and build a new campaign just on that one idea, test it out, play with it, try different settings. And if it works, then great. If it doesn't work, then shut it off and put it back in, turn the old keywords back on with the original test. So I could kind of see it's instead of working on the whole system itself, once you get a highly optimized campaign, the daily grind becomes finding little hotspots and testing
and building stuff out.
Building stuff, yeah.
And of course, budget's a big one, because if they come to you and they say, hey, we're spending X amount on local moves, commercial moves, long distance moving, regular campaign, but now we have this Florida to New York and we're making great money on it, and we don't care about our AdWords budget. We want it to be the most we can because we're making great money on it. Well, that needs its own campaign because you got to control the budget.
Yep. Okay. All right, let's move on to keywords. I think this is, probably where a lot of people are going to want to know things. And this is, I could probably guess the answer on this, but we'll ask just because I want to keep with the same theme. How many keywords are in ad groups? I'm imagining people out there are imagining that a highly optimized account has tons of campaigns. We've just said that no, that's not necessarily the case. Next, they think a highly optimized campaign has tons of ad groups. No, that's not the case. So I'm starting to see a theme here. How many keywords might be in an ad group? I would say it's actually, most people are probably thinking, well, if it's highly optimized, it's going to have one keyword or two keywords or something like that per ad group. What say you?
A lot.
What?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, a lot of keywords. The more time I get with an account, the longer it runs, generally the more keywords I have in ad groups.
Okay. Hundreds?
In some, yeah.
Wow. Okay. Interesting. Okay, and these look like
the reason why is because, again, a lot of what we talk about is theory. Theory takes a long time to play out in reality and prove itself as the right way to manage it. But then in these long-term accounts, I am able to manage it based on the good theories that work for me, that I like, that I think are right. And my theories get to play out. So one of my theories, and this was developed with you, I was very much, when I started with you, a skagger.
right.
And when you're skagging, you're very focused on keywords, single keyword, keywords. Keywords are the biggest thing. But then maybe a year ago, we were having a conversation, probably you didn't even notice at the time, but you talked about how you were doing manual bids at the ad group level. And ever since you kind of opened my eyes on that.
That was a turning point for you. Yeah, I remember.
Yeah, I have totally changed up my bidding, going from keyword focus to ad group focus. So I'm very much an ad group focused manager right now, and I have been for the last year. And I just bought a laptop because I spilled water on it the other day. So it's been a great year. So things are working out. And I look at ad groups as buckets, and I fill those buckets up with keywords. And as long as the keywords are the same, as long as they're the same intent and the same performance, then they should go in a bucket, and having as many of the same intent keywords and the same performing keywords inside of as few buckets as possible, it makes my management very effective, because instead of having to manage bids on hundreds or thousands of ad groups, I'm able to really condense the amount of bid work I have to do. And of course, when things are more condensed and more simple, you're able to do better at them. But I'm able to also keep it big and complex with the amount of keywords. I just don't have to pay a price for that because I'm managing their bids at the ad group bucket level. And I'm trying to keep the buckets as small as possible. Now, that said, what I'm finding in super long-term accounts is that exact match keywords over a long period of time, good exact match keywords, they might perform better than loosely broad match modified keywords. And of course they will.
Yeah.
And I'm not talking every word in the phrase has a modifier. I'm talking one or two words.
Yeah, sure.
And so I try to keep those bids separate. Sometimes I come to that realization after I've thrown everything into a bucket, and then I create more buckets, ad groups. But it all comes back to the search intent, but also the performance. So the search intent of a keyword long distance movers exact match is the same search intent as long distance movers, the word long and the word movers with modifiers on it.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
But with things getting opened up with it variant and all that, even though I think the intent is the same, the performance of that broad match modified might not be as good conversion rate wise because it converts less. I need to bid less. And so I control the bidding at the bucket level, the ad group level. So then I might break those into their own bucket, even though I normally wouldn't do that on a campaign that's been running for 3 months because we don't have that amount of data. But how many keywords in an ad group? In general, the longer I have an account, the more keywords are going to be in those buckets. And the reason why, Chris, is because I'm able to find through search terms and through keyword research more and more yellow and green keywords that we were talking about last week. I'm able to find more and more. And when I find them, I don't have to create a new bucket for them. They have the same intent. They deserve the same ad copy. At least before I see the performance, they should deserve the same bid. I can just throw them in a bucket. So if I'm looking for gold and yellow for years and years, and they fit in the same amount of buckets, I'm going to fill those buckets up with more and more keywords.
I remember you talking about this, and it's really interesting. I love that this is kind of coming out in the way that you're saying it, because there's a couple things that you said that I want to draw on there. First, you said as few buckets as possible. So again, we're back on the keyword idea, and you mentioned you're drawing the ad group and the keywords together here. So number one, notice that Jason said as few buckets as possible. So highly optimized management does not look like...
Doesn't change. It still means simple as possible.
Yeah, it does not look like 300 ad groups with one keyword each. You've literally gone from SCAG to MAG.
Bag. SCAG to bag.
Bunch
Fill up the bag.
Right. I mean, it's complete opposite. And the way I visualize it is this. If one bucket represents, let's say, you're fishing and the bucket is a pond, you want to put as many hooks and worms into the water as possible. And the keywords are your hooks and worms. Because if you know how the ad rank system works, you know that one keyword may show up and it may not show up. Some keywords may be more relevant to others, and you may not get a click or an impression with one, whereas you may get it with another one.
Chris, last week I blacked out and I started talking about PDP and PV10, and you were like, what? This isn't oil and gas. And you know what, Chris? You're down in the Permian Basin,
Mm-hmm.
and you got that rig, and you drill that parent well. And you know what the oil and gas companies had found recently?
Okay.
They found that, if we just have one platform, one rig, and we just drill 20 wells right next to each other, we can save money because we only have one platform, one ad group. But guess what they found out? If you drill too many child wells right next to each other, you hurt the pressure of those child wells, and it's harder to get the oil up out of the ground. So you can get too complex. So you can complex it to save money. But if you get too complex, too many different intent keywords and ad groups, then you lose your pressure and you lose your ability to control bids, and you produce less oil. So boom, it's all one. Everything is everything, Chris.
Ladies and gentlemen,
everything in life follows the same pattern, as simple as possible, but not simpler.
If you ever wanted to understand the complexity of my brain versus Jason's, I just brought you through a fishing illustration, and Jason used words like child well and pressurization.
But it made sense.
It still made sense. I mean, I barely followed. I feel like I was hanging on the bumper trying to, I'm with you. I barely, but yeah, I think that's a good illustration of kind of where our minds go. Fishing and well drilling.
Moving on.
All right. It sounds like what you said when we're still talking about keywords. I would assume that you add a lot of new keywords regularly. That keyword addition is a regular activity. Is that true?
No, it's on a time horizon. The earlier the account, the more keywords we're finding. As time goes on, you get longer on the lateral. the vertical goes down.
Oh,
You start adding less and less keywords because there's less and less out there to find.
Okay.
So I'm still looking. Every week I look for new keywords on long-term accounts, green and yellow, every single week. But you just find more and more of them. But I never accept that I found them all.
Sure.
So
okay.
I'm always looking. I always spend time every week trying to find more.
And these keywords, are they, again, I'm playing the role of the critic here, that thinks he understands what highly optimized management looks like. Most people think it looks like adding all exact match, long tail phrase match, stuff like that. Is that what it looks like? Or are you going to surprise us again?
Well, when I find something, of course I wanted this phrase exact and heavily modified.
Okay.
When I find something good.
Okay.
But in order to find a lot, you got to frack the well. You got to put some disgusting stuff down there.
Okay.
Some proppins. You got to put some broad keywords in there.
These really? Are you actually using?
All I think about all day is oil and gas. That's all I think about. And then I got to do Google Ads. That's all I think about.
What? You know these words? Do you read books about how to drill an oil well? I mean, how do you know these words? Oh no, he's got a book. Keep note. He keeps his books on the ground. I put mine on nice shelves behind me. Oh, here we go. Petroleum Geology, Exploration, Drilling, and Production. Are you freaking kidding me? That book is right. Look how thick that is.
What edition?
It's a hardback. You've got a hardback of that kind of book? What? The more I know Jason, the less I understand. Well, another one? A hardback of Fundamentals of Oil Gas Accounting. And another, 2020 Water Management textbook. Water management? I guess that, are you going to start?
Chris, when you drill a well, you get oil, you get gas, you get NGL. Those make you money. But then you also get this dirty water you got to figure out something to do with.
So Jason's third podcast he'll start will be a book club that no one listens to because he reads things like Water Management 2020.
Thanks for that.
Okay, well.
So anyway, my point is that you get these oil and gas wells, you drill them, and then all the easy oil comes up, just so you know. There's a lot of pressure in that rock.
Okay.
You just put a hole in the ground, and the oil just comes up, and you're like, oh, this is easy.
Yeah.
But then all the easy oil comes up. So you know what they do, Chris? They put a bunch of plastics and all this kind of stuff, little pellets and sand. They push it down 8,000 feet, and then they blow it up in the rock.
What?
And they bomb the rock, and that causes fissures in the rock, and then the harder oil and gas flows to the well, and they make money from that. So what do you do with campaigns? You frack them. You put in broad keywords. You blow it up. Pure broad.
Wow.
Now you get it. Now you get it. You get it.
That's it. That's
you get it. It's coming full circle.
I try and sound
Take that
smart.
shirt off, Chris. Let's just.
Oh my gosh, this is.
Take it off. Sorry, I got a little excited. I got to do something. I got physical energy in me. Got to touch something.
I try and sound smart, and you just literally said you got to take fissures and explode the traffic. That was beautiful. That was.
But you get what I'm saying with the pure broad keywords.
The word pictures.
You got to frack the campaign.
Were just phenomenal.
You know what happens sometimes when they frack, Chris? And
no, of course I don't. How the hell would I know?
What they've been doing? Okay, so this changed recently in Oklahoma. So Oklahoma, we're pro oil and gas, right?
Yeah. I'm in
brings
Texas.
In a lot of money and jobs.
We're brothers.
For our state.
Yes,
you're in Texas.
Yeah.
Yep. So they drill. They get all that dirty water, right? And the water's not worth anything. So you know what they were doing a few years ago? They were taking that dirty, disgusting water, and they were just drilling it back down into the ground and just putting it there. And that was causing a bunch of earthquakes in Oklahoma.
Yep.
And even in Oklahoma, with our being pro energy and all that, we were like, "Whoa, you guys gotta figure something out."
I felt those.
You can't be causing earthquakes.
I used to live in DFW, and I felt those little micro earthquakes. Yeah, I remember that.
Well, hey, you know what an earthquake is? That's when your pure broads go wrong and they bring in some crazy traffic and you're like, we got to slow these things down. So you know what you do? You get a water treatment facility out there, some midstream assets. You treat that water. You know what that is in the Google Ads account? It's lowering those bids on those pure broads. Get them under control.
Can I?
So Chris, when you look for keywords,
can I? Since I came up with the idea, can I name this episode? And
do it.
Can I name it? Frack your Google Ads. Can we call it that?
Yeah, sure. Frack your campaign.
No, well, it's got to use the word frack your Google Ads campaigns. How about that? Frack your Google Ads. Okay, that's it.
Chris. How to
frack.
like it's a known strategy. Like, wait, people frack their campaigns?
Of course they do. Of course they do.
So Chris, how do you find how are you adding a bunch of keywords? Well, of course, no, like over the long term, because you find them all. You find the easy ones. But then you got to find the ones that you couldn't find. And one of the biggest ways I do that is pure broad keywords. They really do bring in search terms that you wouldn't have exposed yourself to without doing pure broad keywords. And so I find myself finding a lot of new keyword ideas from those pure broad keywords, but you got to do them the right way and keep things under control.
Okay. Next, keep it on the keywords thing. I would assume you have tons of negative keywords.
Correct. Yeah, thousands.
Okay.
I build up lists of thousands of negative. So we've all heard the agency go out there and they audit one of your client's accounts and you've been with the client for 45 days and they're like, oh, this agency said we should have thousands of negative keywords. Where's your list? Or you talk to a new client and they're like, do you have a pre-developed list for this industry?
Right.
And so here I'm on both sides of that spectrum. So one, I have long-term accounts with thousands of negative keywords on their list.
Yeah.
But I think that's a stupid thing to do before you start running an account.
For a new account.
Because the idea with new accounts is, no, we shouldn't be getting horrible search terms. Like we should be getting good search terms right from the start with the right keywords. So you don't really have a need for a ton of negative keywords when you start. I think that's kind of an overrated kind of pitch, if you will. But you can definitely build stuff up over working with an industry a lot. But I only find myself with those thousands of negative keywords when it is a long-term account.
Okay. I'm going to skip over bidding because I feel like we've already discussed a lot of that. And I want to get into the last segment here of optimizing. Two things that I want to know, and this kind of goes into bidding. We get a little bit of bidding. So keywords, obviously that's where you're going to take your action as keywords. And when you find bad keywords, I would assume that you can only take two actions. You either lower the bids or you pause them entirely. Do you typically find yourself lowering bids first? Because I know you're a manual Google Ads manual bidder, of course, the only kind, the best kind. Do you lower the bids of that keyword first or do you pause it?
Well, number one, on long-term accounts, I don't have bad keywords.
Underperforming?
They've proven themselves.
But what about, okay, long-term? We're talking long-term.
Well, here's the thing, Chris. There's no such thing as underperformance in a long-term account.
Okay.
You're either performing or you're not. And if you perform at different levels, that's okay.
Okay.
You manage the bids appropriately. So if I have a group of keywords, a bucket, and I know that bucket gets a 25% conversion rate, well, I'm going to bid accordingly. I'm going to bid aggressively because I can afford to, because 1 out of every 4 clicks converts. And then if I have a bucket of keywords that has a 2% conversion rate, down 90% compared to the other ad group, there's nothing wrong with that. You just bid differently. So in these long-term accounts, as long as a group of keywords can put something on the board and get conversions, you run it if you have budget for it. Mm-hmm. But you just bid it differently than the high-performing one. So I don't find myself pausing a lot of keywords at all.
Okay.
Because they've already have proven themselves. If they're in there, they perform at some level. If they didn't perform, then they got paused a long time ago.
Okay.
But those pure broad keywords, those are ones where I run them and I'm very open to just killing them off and pausing them quickly. Yeah. Because broad keywords are so open, the other broad keywords will pick up whatever slack. That one individual keyword that happened to not convert over enough amount of money that I thought it was worth pausing, the other ones will pick up that slack. And then Oh, the only other reason I would pause in a long-term account, Chris, besides pure broad, is if something changes, is if the market changes, is if close variants change. And now all of a sudden I look back over the last year and a keyword or group of keywords has a 5% conversion rate. Then what if they change the close variants, or what if the meaning of the search changed in the market size and now it has like a close to a 0% conversion rate or much lower? Then that's where I'm like, well, something's changed. Let's pause it. But that's the only time I find myself pausing stuff.
Okay. That's really surprising. Okay. One last thing, and this one may vary based on account, but you mentioned, conversion rate, cost per conversion, optimizing for conversions. Ideally, and let's say long-term account, you would hope to get to this point, but I would assume you would prefer to work with ROAS accounts, right? You want to prefer to base your management on value, conversion value, rather than conversion numbers. Do you find that is practical? Do you do that most of the time, or sometimes it's just not going to work, and most of your long-term accounts do not have conversion value assigned, so you can't get an actual ROAS to manage your bidding on?
Yes, no.
Okay. That's what I figured. Can you give me a little? I'm a bad interviewer. Can you please explain more?
No, I like what you did there. I gave you a crappy, very arrogant answer meant to confuse. Yes, no. And then you countered me with your confusing answer like you understood what I was saying. And now I got to think, did you not? Was there a technical thing? You only heard the first word? Yes, no?
I explained your answer for you. The answer is sometimes it's practical and it does work, and sometimes it can't.
No, here's the thing. I for my management style, the kind of clients I work with, I don't do conversion values.
Okay. Yeah.
I do lead generation. Now, I do think for lead generation, you should have conversion values. But every time I've done a long-term account with a client for service companies, it's always a theoretical thing. It's always, okay, we know long distance moves on average are worth this. So in order to make a 4 or 5x return on our cost per acquisition, we got to get the cost per conversion to be this. So there's two parts to this. When I work with clients and accounts for a long time, I know we talk and they become better at Google Ads. I become better at their industry, and we learn together, and we definitely focus on different types of their business or work different things. So for a moving company, an ad group for apartment moving keywords, those are going to be worth a lot less for them than the previously mentioned Florida, New York long distance moving buckets or campaign. So you get a sense of what different kinds of their business is worth to different clients, and then you bid accordingly. But I just always backtrack it into a cost per conversion. That's the way I prefer to bid. That's the way I prefer to focus my management, not on a return on ad spend. I like to get the return on ad spend from the client in terms of what different parts of their business are worth to them. Yep. Then we backtrack, okay, that's what one client or customer in that part of your business is worth. When you acquire them, how many Google Ads conversions does it take to acquire them? And then that gives you your target cost per conversion. So we have our target return, 3 to 5x. We have our how many conversions it takes to acquire that return each time. And then let me just do some math in my head. If we got $500 every time we got one and we wanted a 5x, it would have to cost $100 to acquire one of those customers. If our conversion rate was 25%, our cost per conversion would need to be $25.
Okay.
Because it would take 4 $25 conversions to acquire a customer at $100. For that specific service line, they get $500. It's a 5x. So now, as a Google Ads manager, I don't want to have to think about all that stuff more than one time. And so now I know for this service, the cost per conversion needs to be $25.
Okay.
Period. End of story. And then I can focus my management on that. So it is return on ad spend inspired, but it's cost per conversion focused.
Boy, man.
You like that?
Man, you've been spitting some fire today. All right, ladies and gentlemen, if you like what Jason says, then support our sponsors, because that is who helps us pay for the hosting and helps us get where we are now and keep doing this every week. Let me tell you
helps
a quick...
us pay for laptops when you just knock over water on them and you're like, oh, I only bought this a year ago and now it doesn't work. So what am I going to do? Am I going to put it upside down on a pillow for 2 days
rice
and then
on
go
it
to the Apple store that's not even open because of COVID and then say, hey, can you fix this and not have a laptop for 3 months? Or do I just go down the street and swipe a card and be like, I need a new one. Thank you.
Yeah. Give.
And what's money?
Yeah. If you want to continue Jason's elaborate lifestyle, please sponsor us and go to optio.com/PSP2. Let me tell you about one feature that I think is so cool that this tool has. We're talking to managers out there. A lot of our people out there are managers. They manage their own campaign. They have an agency where they have a bunch of people working for them. We have, all kinds of stuff. And the biggest issue is keeping track of what you did, what changed, what you're doing in the campaign. And one issue is keeping notes and tracking what happened. And there's an integrated change history tool, which is just beautiful. When you change something, you can add a note on that day for that change, and you can see your notes attached to the changes. So imagine, highly optimized, you fracked the heck out of your Google Ads campaign, and now you have notes for all the fracking that you've done. You have details about each of the changes, so you can go back and say, oh, that's right, back in September I did this, and then I did this. This note thing should be vanilla. I mean, it should be in the actual Google Ads engine, but we're still waiting for that to go through. So in the meantime, optio.com/PSP2, great tool. We highly recommend it. And now, one very last important question. You guys thank you for continuing to listen through the advertisement. Jason, one last very important question. What is your favorite color?
Like a color?
Yeah.
Like
you can see colors, right? Do you see in colors?
I've never, I guess I don't have one. I've never taken time to think about that. Every second of my life has been focused on maximizing the amount of money I can suck out of this system and become a billionaire.
That's what I'm talking about. That's the best answer, because I was absolutely going to make fun of you if you gave me an answer. That's all right. Good news. Me and Jason can continue.
Just a joke. I'll tell you the joke. It's a very alpha move. I'll tell you in Patreon.
Okay, there you go. $2 a month. You can join us on our Patreon only lounge, where we pass out $100 bills from Jason's bottomless wallet, and it's a great place. You're gonna love it. Jason and I are about to go through those golden doors right now into that lounge, and paidsearchpodcast.com. Click on the Patreon link and you can join us there. Otherwise, for you cheapos, we'll see you next Thursday.